pretty much get going. So welcome to the first SAP Bootcamp, so we call it. There's not too many people on today, but hopefully as the community grows, we get some more people on. This will be exciting though. It's just as much a good test run for me as I'm building up the program. I don't know if you guys saw the video that I posted out with kind of the plan for the program as it comes. But basically how these bootcamps go is, so everyone's muted, that's good. I'm going to share my screen and I'm basically going to go through some module content. And then obviously it's getting recorded and we'll check it out. As I'm going through, I'll kind of give you guys a chance to ask questions. I might just say does everyone get that? Any questions or whatever as we kind of go through it. And then towards the end, we're basically just going to make it a full-on Q&A, specifically about the topic of today. So by that point, literally everyone can just unmute and you can just go through examples or go through questions as they come, etc. Today is, I think, one of the most important modules that will be in the program as such. So first of all, can everyone see my screen? We good? Awesome. Okay, so this is part of a module called Laying Your Track, right? And I'm going to touch on that just now. But the title of what we're going to talk about today is basically don't fail like everyone else. And I couldn't have made that title as more clear than I could here. But honestly, I genuinely mean it. This is probably the #1 reason why certain agencies succeed and the rest don't. And it's really coming down to the offer creation stuff, because of course we're going to go through the outreach and the onboarding and there's all these different systems and things that we can touch on. I know with Carlos, that was one of the things that we fixed. I know Yannick, Marcel, a lot of people, that's where we struggle. But the main thing is figuring out what is the right offer, because if you have the right offer, everything else works a shit ton better, right? So this is a really, really critical thing. So as I said, this is the #1 reason agencies fail. And the funny thing is no one is talking about it. I mean, I'm almost in every single agency flagship program out there. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on courses and products and whatever, and mentorships, to be honest. And this is something that seems to get overlooked. I think the general industry stance is you should just pick a niche, pick a service and just go all out. And almost, I'd say 9 out of 10 agencies, they always have the same thing. They all want to do Facebook ads. Recently, it's TikTok ads. And they all want to do e-com businesses, or they all want to do info businesses. That is the MO. As soon as we go out of that, it's you 1 out of a million, honestly. And what this leads to is huge amounts of competition. It leads to a lot of issues because a lot of these agencies also are simply not the best. They haven't been doing it the longest. We have so many clients in my agency that we have case study upon case study. On sales calls, sometimes I literally just go in, share my screen in Bootcamp, which is what we use for project management. And I just show the client all of our clients and I'm pick one and we'll just use them as a case study, right? That's very powerful. But for a lot of agencies, they don't have that. And so to try and compete against other agencies that do in a space like that is not impossible, because that's where we started. That's where a lot of you guys have seen results, but I'm just saying it doesn't have to be so difficult. And there's certain ways that we can go around that. So first of all, let's look at where we are in the process. Now, I recently threw up a video in the portal. So if you guys are watching the recordings, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I think for a lot of people in the bootcamp, this is new. But when I set out to build this program, there was a couple of things that I wanted to do. #1, I wanted to do what helped me get to where I am, which is, as I said, I've taken almost every program, but the main thing that helped me is direct one-on-one kind of hold my hand help, which none of these programs or courses really offered. And also a lot of them were just watered down versions. If you're in 12 different agency programs and you literally pull up the curriculum next to each other, it's copy paste. They change the name here, but it's the same thing, and everything is all the same structure. And I really wanted to do something different. So a couple of things are happening. I don't know if you guys saw, but there's now a vault with literally the notes of every single book I've read in there. By the end of this week, tomorrow, there's going to be 15, 20 sales calls that my agency itself has had with clients that will all be there for you guys viewing. And there's a few other things that we have planned. But in doing this course, we are building a sports car, which everyone's confused. But an R8 is what Tony Stark drives. It's Iron Man. That's what kind of got me first motivated in this whole thing. Back when I was like 11 years old, I was like, I want one of those. I want a house like that. So I should probably start making some money. And that's how we really, really got started. And if you think of a car, sports car, every part of it is really, really finely tuned, from the engine to the pipeline. And you can almost draw a direct comparison to an agency, right? A perfect example is cars don't move unless they have fuel or gas. You can think of fuel or gas as sales for your agency. That's what gives life to it, right? And you need to get petrol stations and gas pumps and things. That's your prospecting. And then you need a process of converting it inside the car. That's your pipeline for the agency. And then you need to consistently use it as efficiently as possible. And that is your operation structure. And today we're talking about the track that your race car, and for me, it's an R8. For you, it could be McLaren, Ferrari, like honestly, print it out, stick it on your wall, whatever it is, doesn't matter. That's for you to choose. But today we're basically going to be talking about the track that the car moves on. And I said something quite important here, but the track needs to come before the car. Super, super important, because I feel like a lot of people miss that. But if you're building a car and the car is driving around and you have absolutely no idea where you're going, you've got no racetrack, you've got no lanes, you've got nothing, you're going to be completely lost. And the other thing to notice is a racetrack is a loop. It's like a full circle. And so one of the things that I came across, or one of the things I've realized, and that's why I record Systems and Profit, is it is impossible to start an agency and not be successful if you adopt the mindset of iteration, which is everything that doesn't work is just things to not do, and you consistently change and adapt, and you consistently get better. So as you go through this journey of building and scaling agencies, I really want you guys to kind of think of yourselves running around this loop. And every time you complete a lap, you have a lot of learnings to take with you so that the next lap you're doing it in better time and better time. And really that is just an agency, like plain and simple. Everything is iterative. You try out each methods. If it doesn't work, you make changes or you change it. You try certain people in positions. If they don't deliver on results, you move them around or you get new people. You try different services, offers, you try things. An agency can never die if you're still in the driving seat, right? So really want to try and drill that home. The other thing that's also quite important is you have to be able to see where you are going. So this is another big thing that I think people don't understand, but I think a lot of people in the space actually refer to it as blinders. So when horses go around tracks, they have these things on their heads, which basically block out any noise. So it forces them to look straight. On your racing track, try and think of that as the lanes that are on the track, right? These are all the things that you have to do to kind of get results. And if you go off course, if you suddenly are then doing crypto and then you're looking at drop shipping and then you're doing this and then suddenly you literally just get nowhere, right? You don't actually progress on the track. And the other thing, which is a bit of truth, but on a racetrack, there's really only so many lanes, which means there's only so many companies or cars that can actually drive. So this kind of talks about the blue ocean strategy and getting back to that, which is like, you need to find a racetrack that actually has space for you to race, where you can actually perform. And then honestly, you just need to do your laps, put in the work until you get faster and faster and faster and faster. And then that again goes back to the flywheel concept, which is Jim Collins' work. Like there's a lot of books and things I can recommend that basically break each of those things down. But I feel like this is just a cooler way to actually make it make sense. And the last thing that I want to highlight is at these race events, right? Formula One, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of spectators. Now, no one goes to watch a race if it's going to be boring. In other words, if all of the drivers are driving at the same pace, like no one's overtaking, everything's boring, no one will go. And so this talks about how your agency cannot be another agency. It must be a brand, right? Because otherwise no one is going to watch you because you're going to be boring. So there's a lot of parallels that actually come out of this, right? But we'll get to that as we go. But is that making sense for everyone? Good? Awesome. Okay, so here's what we're actually going to cover today on today's bootcamp is, first of all, understanding your goals and how offers are created. Because I feel like a lot of people, when they start agencies or even when they're scaling it, they're confused what their actual goal should be or actually is. Why you must start with an MVP and the magic question. Now, the MVP, if you don't know what that is, I'll get to it in a bit. Then I want to talk about niches versus types of businesses, because I think there's a bit of confusion on that one as well. I want to talk about do what's easy first, brand versus agencies that fail. And I actually have a case study that I'm going to go through there. And then I'm going to kind of take everything that we go over today and put it into like some actual action steps that you can take. And as you know, tomorrow we have another one of these events. And if you guys can complete a lot of the action steps before the event, then we'll kind of go through everything there. And I saw Nazar, you just joined. So we're going to go through all this content. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A where we can break through everything else. Right. So let's start with understanding your goals and how offers are actually created. So we really need to ask ourselves, what are we actually doing here? Because I feel like a lot of people, at least beginner agencies, and I'm trying to cater to like agencies that are at both ends of the spectrum, but I always find that beginners are very confused with what they're doing, and agencies that have seen some form of success, like I recently worked with someone who was, I think he was doing like 35, now he's doing 60. And his agency had a lot of things right, but they were just doing so many things that had nothing to do with their core service. They were beginning to get distracted and losing momentum. And so one of two things happen. Either in the beginning, you've got no focus and you're all over the show, or you have some form of success and then this kind of brings you down. So it can really kind of go both ways. So let's talk about the things we are not doing. We are not here to sell Facebook ads. And I want to say that because every single new agency comes with, they want to sell Facebook ads, they want to sell it to e-com businesses. And I know I'm saying it again, but I want to repeat it because you cannot be the same as the other 5,000 agencies that just started yesterday, right? Like that cannot happen. And most agencies do not even want to scale e-com brands. Like most people, when they start an agency, they have no desire to run ads. They have no desire to scale e-com brands. They have no desire to scale info brands. They have absolutely no desire to compete against the best in an arena that they know nothing about. Like, again, remember, e-com and info is the most highly coveted niches purely because there is the potential to make the most amount of money, right? E-com businesses scale very quickly when you get a winning formula. Info businesses have super high margins. So if you get a winning formula, you have high margins, meaning you can spend a lot more on the acquisition, which usually means you can get very high ROAS numbers. And it usually means you can take big performance fees home from getting those ROAS numbers. That is why the best of the best in agency space go after those niches. But the problem is you are competing against the best in those spaces. And is that really what you want to do right in the beginning? Now, if you guys have brands that are looking at e-com and info, that's your space. Like, I don't want this whole day bootcamp to just be like trashing on those two spaces, because my agency operates in those two spaces. So it's not like the spaces don't work. And I know a lot of you guys, in fact, every single one of you has seen some form of success in the agency space. So it's not like you cannot get results there. But I'm just looking at, like, if I was in your place starting or scaling back then, what I would do to get the quickest results possible. And those results are, I just want a cash flow business that will, for some of you, let you leave your job, let you move out, get a fancy house, travel the world, like you have your own ambitions. That just requires cash, right? Now, I honestly also think majority of you don't care if you're working on e-com businesses or info businesses or whatever, because you're selling services, you're outsourcing the deliverability, and you are learning how to manage a team, how to build a culture, how to sell, how to hire. You're learning all these things. The actual service itself is completely irrelevant, right? Completely, because it changes quite often. And we've seen this. I mean, TikTok just came out of nowhere and is killing Facebook at the moment, right? Like every single one of our clients is being upsold onto TikTok at the moment because it's easy for us to upsell because they all want to do it. And that just happened out of nowhere. So again, you have to be adaptable. And then also keeping things as lean and as simple as possible. Like when you run a business, what you do not want is absolute complexity, too many people, too many services, too many things moving around. This is a lesson that I had to learn the hard way last year, because I fell down that trap as we're doing really, really well, wanted to scale. And I thought, in order to scale, let me just add more services, add more departments, add more people. And today we have literally way less services than we did last year and way less people, yet we're almost 3 times more profitable, right? And that's the complete opposite mindset. So that was a huge, huge, huge thing. And then the last thing that I feel like you certainly don't want to do when scaling or starting is dealing with very angry clients because you can't get results. And I say that because e-com and info is also the hardest space to get results, because just as you have huge competition as an agency, your clients have huge competition with e-com and info as well. And it's literally getting worse, right? And towards the end of this, I'm going to show you some weird agencies that like do services I feel like a lot of people don't think of. And it's a 6-figure per month business, right? So what we need to do is really just talk about like, how did we get to the offer? How do you come up with an offer? Because the reason I think we have this problem is almost everyone in the space who does any form of like education or whatever, their agency is e-com and info, right? And I feel like I'm part of that problem because that's what our agency does, right? And so I'm going to call it out right now. A lot of people just start with e-com info because that's what they see the leaders in the space doing, and so they just want to copy, right? So I really just want to go back to how do we actually create offers? Because a lot of you don't know that, for example, there's a software called Airtable, and there are a bunch of agencies that literally just do implementation work for Airtable, and they make 6 figures a month just setting up tables and doing automations and things there, right? Another one is Salesforce. I don't know how well you guys know about CRMs and things, but Salesforce is a super, super complicated CRM that a lot of very big companies use. And the consultants and the agencies that literally implement those things are paid tens of thousands of dollars a month to do that, right? And there are so many of these softwares. There's an entire agency I know of that literally just sets up Zapier for other people and other companies on retainer basis and does 6 figures a month, right? And like everyone can learn these tools. I'm pretty sure all of you already know how to use Zapier because we use it in our agencies, but the average person doesn't. So let's talk about how we can discover these offers, or at least think about it. But the first thing is businesses are super simple. They just solve problems, right? And the problem here is the problem always almost comes before the offer. We're trying to do this in reverse because we don't have a problem that we're trying to solve and couldn't find anyone else to solve it, so we had to do it ourselves. We are approaching the market and just trying to start selling things immediately. But this is the common path that we usually go through. So usually what happens is someone, usually a business owner, has a problem. Let's just use ecom as a perfect example. So someone starts this ecom brand, they have a problem, they need to make more sales, they need to clear more inventory. They try to do it themselves, right? By running some Facebook ads from a YouTube video, making some posts on social, and it doesn't work. So what they do is, because they are an ecom business owner, they have a bunch of friends naturally who are also ecom brands, because when you are in the space, you just become friends with other people in the space, right? These are small niches we're talking about. And so they start asking their buddies, hey, how are you doing this? What's happening? And then they also look at their competitors, because every business knows who their competitors are. And they start looking, what are they doing? Because naturally you want to just copy if they're getting some results. And that gives you validation, because if competitors are doing things and you're asking other friends and they're literally saying, hey, I have the same issue, but I don't know how to fix it, then that shows you there is a huge, huge lack of knowledge and a gap that you can fill. And then what happens is most people just figure out the issue by learning, spending money, whatever. Then they start an agency because now they know how to solve the problem. And then they go back to the people they were asking for help in the first place and sell them the solution because they just discovered it. So let me, perfect example. I think you guys know my story, but real cap. I used to be a dropshipper. I used to run a lot of ecom brands. I built my own, scaled them, sold them, acquired others, scaled, sold, flipped, went the route. So I know, I lived in London for a year. I know every single year there is a Shopify conference that happens in Old Street in London, where there's a panel of people from Shopify that meet there, and it's a Q&A session. I'm sure if you guys check your own cities, you'll find something else similar, like the app meetup.com, very, very similar. And what Shopify does is they usually fly out some marketer guy, a developer, and then someone else. And they literally sit in a Q&A table, and there's a bunch of people with Shopify brands there who can ask questions on how to set up things and how to do certain stuff. And I always used to go to those events with super, super hard questions that I knew the panel would really, really struggle to answer, because what would happen is at the end, when we all split up, I would have so many people come to me saying, wow, you must really know what you're talking about since you confused the Shopify guys. What do you do? And I would literally just collect names and emails and numbers. And the next day I would have like 5 new clients, right? Now, that is how I rapidly moved my agency quickly, because I knew what ecom owners do because I was one, right? I had the problem myself with my own brands. I was trying to grow them through ads. And so I had to learn ads and I had to learn about all these things. So that's that. But if we can't take the normal route, how can we go about doing this with the highest chance of success? Okay, so I understand that, like, for you guys, if you want to operate an agency, you can't go into the space and start speaking to too many people and actually trying to do it, because remember, we also want to get results quickly. So here's what I think. You should always start with a MVP, a minimal viable product, and implement this magic question. So first of all, does everyone know exactly what a MVP is, or has anyone like heard about it or anything like that?
I don't know if I'm right, but is it a minimum viable product, or is it something else?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay.
Minimal viable product. But for the case of this, I'm just going to change the word product and invent my own word, and I'm going to call it a MVS, minimal viable service. All right, because that's what we're doing here. But it's the same thing. And there's a book here, The Lean Startup. There are so many books on this. Like The Lean Startup, for those of you who don't know, is basically just a copy, paste, rewrite version of the 4 hypotheses of business success, which is like the OG book that was written for Silicon Valley businesses on a lean startup. That's like what Airbnb and those guys base their businesses off. And then this guy, Eric Rice, read the book, thought it was a good idea, and he just made it cool again, right? He took some of it and just rewrote it in a more palatable sense. So there's so many books on this, but basically, essentially, it means that you must just sell before you build. Right? And this is the whole philosophy behind Systems and Profit. I see so many agencies and so many people spending so long trying to build the perfect team before they start actually selling. And then they're building their onboarding process, and then they're building this, and they're doing all of these things before they've even made a sale. And there's a couple issues with that. Number one, you could be operating in completely the wrong space. So all the work that you just did, onboarding, operations, SOPs, is irrelevant because it's not the right space. Number two, you really should be building SOPs and things based on customer feedback. It's a huge lesson that I've had drilled into me. It's the same way. And again, like I want to show you guys that I really do practice what I preach, not in my agency, but also even in SAP. The reason I chose to do boot camps like this is because I want to get people's feedback. So I'm building this program alongside people's feedback. I'm not just guessing what you guys want and then just doing it, right? Which is what most agencies do out there. There's a very systematic approach to making sure that we do this right and that we're doing it consistently, okay? So that's the first thing. This is critical to systems thinking. And a lot of you guys don't know this, which is thinking in iteration loops, right? And this is really just trying and trying and trying. So on the right-hand side here, you can see different racetracks, right? And every time you do your lap, you literally just change your track. And there's a couple of things that you also have to come to terms with. First of all, as smart as we all are, it's very unlikely that you will get this right the first time, which is when you start scaling an agency, you can't just pick one niche, one service and say, cool, I'm going to go with that and that will be it. Like I know so many people as well, so many agencies that have been trying to do the same niche and the same service over and over and over and over again. And we get on the calls and they ask questions about outreach and they ask questions about like how many emails and all these things. And in the beginning, sometimes they're a bit shaky, but by the end of it, I've almost perfected their outreach systems. I've perfected everything that they're doing. So they should be getting results, but they're drilling their head in the same industry over and over and over, the same niche. If they just applied everything they had learned in a different space, they might see overnight results, right? Like they honestly could achieve that, especially if it's an industry that has very, very minimal competition. And that's a little bit saddening because I know a lot of people are attached to the niches that they first choose. But again, what you need to understand is niches can be stepping stones, right? Because one of the things that I think, I don't think it's here, but it comes later down the line, is agency momentum is a real thing. You could be operating in a niche that you do not love, you don't care about the niche, whatever, but you can sign clients easily, you can charge big fees for it, and you can also SAP the hell out of it. Like the thing with PPC, because I think most people here run PPC agencies, it's really difficult to get results and it's complicated, right? Like going back to the agency that does Zapier stuff, you can SAP the hell out of that, right? Like you can hire someone in like India or one of these countries for like $2 an hour to deliver services because they are literally just following SOPs. I know another agency that all they do is install CRMs for lead-based businesses, right? And they not just lead-based businesses, they have like 2 specific niches. I think one of them is real estate and the other I think is like doctors or like medical practices. And all they do is just install CRMs. And so they literally have an SOP A through Z, and then they charge a big upfront fee for doing that. And then they charge a monthly fee for hygiene maintenance because CRMs get filled with a bunch of clutter and sales training for the guys. And they literally have like $2 per hour people implementing that because it's not complicated to repeat the process. Whereas running ads and things complicated, right? And we all know that. But you can charge for it, right? With PPC, you can charge big retainers and you can take performance fees. But again, when you're just getting started out, like if you can make 10, 15, 20K a month, doing that and then deploy those resources back into the other division in your agency focusing on ecom PPC, that is a way better position to be than just drilling your head, banging it against the wall, trying to just do ecom the entire time, right? And there's a huge realization that I think people need to have there, okay? So your business must come to life in a blue ocean. That's basically what I'm saying here, which is like when you have an established business, you have a bit more momentum and things you can throw at stuff, right? Like when you have cash, you have people and you have resources, you can start attacking heavyweight companies. For example, my agency, we are about to begin account-based marketing. Now, I don't know if you guys know what account-based marketing is, but essentially we pick a list of like 25 companies that I absolutely want. And I literally have one person dedicated full-time to trying to sign those 25 clients, right? And that is literally just like everything from, they're quite big clients, obviously, so there's quite a big team, messaging every single person on that team, learning everything about them, where do they go, trying to email, follow them on social, because when you only have 25 targets, you can go super deep. Whereas what you do when you start out, you go wide. You just try and get as many leads as possible, as many sales calls booked as possible, and then you have conversion numbers, right? Account-based marketing is the opposite of that. You go super targeted. But again, I would never recommend that to anyone who's not doing like 30K a month, because it's simply not worth it. It's expensive and it's also very long-term. Like these accounts that I'm chasing, I know I will only see them in 2-3 months from now, right? And for most businesses, you would run out of money before you get there, right? Like, or you would burn out because you have fixed overheads. So again, like certain things are different. So when your business starts, make sure you start in a blue ocean. And blue ocean, I think everyone knows, otherwise go read the book Blue Ocean Strategy, but I'll save you the $20 or whatever it is and summarize it. Basically, you've got blue and red oceans. Blue oceans are where there's lots of fish, potential customers, no sharks, competitors. Red oceans is when there's not a lot of fish and a lot of sharks. Sharks eat the fish, it makes blood, so the ocean goes red. Plain and simple. The moral of the story is try and swim where there isn't a lot of competitors and there is a lot of clients, and don't swim in the opposite, right? That's plain and simple what it is. So start your business where it's easy to scale. And even like, honestly, I would really only, because everyone has a dream niche, right? Like everyone has a dream niche. My dream niche is not ecom and info at all. My dream niche is SaaS. Why? Because I have some long-term ideas that I want to do there. And SaaS, I would much rather take a piece of the companies because I know they get sold or they get valued at massive valuations. So there's long-term plays there. But I started at ecom and info because I knew I could get clients without even really trying in the beginning. So it made sense for me, right? You all have different skills and different backgrounds. So yours might be different, but it's the same thing. Okay. And again, like everything in business is about minimizing risk. So this is going back to like, don't just choose one niche and one service, because when you go all in to one niche and one service, you're like maximizing risk, which is the complete opposite of what we need to do here. So you need to go wide before you go deep. Throw shit at the wall and honestly just see what sticks. Like I've heard of some niches, which at first thought, I'm like, I would never do that. And then the guy comes back in like a month's time and he's like equal to me in MRR, if not beating me, or like some amazing result with like way simpler processes of getting results. And I'm kind of a little bit jealous about it, right? Like I can't tell you how many times that has happened. And so again, like you just have to try things. And you know, the thing with this is you just have to go into this, because I can see people are not going to do this, but go into it with an iterative mindset that like if a niche or a service doesn't work, that's fine, because there's many others. So you have to just go into with that mindset of try, fail, move on, try, fail, move on, right? Like that's how we approach this, okay? And then also you have to actually taste it to have an opinion on it, right? And that's what I was saying is like, you cannot write off a service or a niche if you've never even tried it, because you have no idea how much value there is behind it, right? And I'll give you a bunch of ideas, as I said at the end, but like one of them is the CRM implementation companies. I've implemented, it was a problem actually that we had in our agency last year. I've always, because I like softwares, I've always kind of interested in them. And so last year, I think we had like 7 CRMs just because I just wanted to change. I saw like some ad or some YouTube video for Monday.com. And then I was like, this looks cool. Let me just move everything there. And then someone told me about Asana and I saw some video for it. I was like, this looks cool. Let me just shift everything there. And, you know, the list goes on and on, right? And that's a huge problem that I've had. Now we're running on Bootcamp, whereas a couple of months ago it was Asana. It's a huge problem that I've had, that I've had to learn to get past that, right? And now we've had the same system for quite a while. No plans on changing. But that's a mistake, or at least something that I personally had to learn. And when I first heard about the CRM implementation space, I was like, I've implemented like 7 of them. Why would I ever pay someone else to do that? And then I found out there's a huge amount of people that honestly would, right? Especially for more complicated businesses where there's established processes, right? And so again, don't write off things until you try it. And then again, just nothing is a loss if you can literally just keep trying new ones, unless you go out of business, which is almost impossible in an agency space. An agency is not like a business that has stock, overheads, huge staff. It is almost impossible for an agency to go out of business, especially because if you're running it properly, you should have cash reserves for like 6 to 12 months. And it's hard to have 0 clients for 6 to 12 months. Like, it's pretty hard to do that, right? Anyways, all you need is 1 sentence to start this learning process. And I've spoken to a couple of you about this, but I'm just going to go through it one more time. We help X achieve Y by doing Z, or we X, Y, Z. Okay, and if we circle and highlight each of these things, the X, this is your niche. The Y is the outcome they want. I'm going to speak about that in future modules. It's not for this one, but it's basically outcome sell instead of like KPI sell. Like, don't say, we help you do this, right? Because no one cares. Rather, just in the sales call, ask them, what would you like to achieve? And then you rework your entire offer based on what they want to achieve. And then for the Z, don't just say we run Facebook ads or we do TikTok ads, right? Try and make it interesting by creating margin in mystery. And then the XYZ, you have to make it make sense for them. So tomorrow's bootcamp is all about how to make a 100% sellable offer, which is what we do. So you guys might not know this, but Centrosite changes its offer for every single client that we get on a sales call. We don't just have like this is what we sell and we go for it, because it changes. So like, some clients want freedom, some clients just want more money, some clients just want whatever. We change. And then our guarantee, you always need a guarantee, but our guarantee changes. And in tomorrow, I'm going to show you a bunch of guarantee examples, some ideas, an actual formula for maximizing risk, minimizing downside. Like, that's tomorrow's bootcamp, so make sure you're there. But now that we're doing this, we're basically going to go through this formula, and we're going to just try and do X, Y, and Z today. And then tomorrow, I'm pretty much going to focus on X, Y, Z, which is a combination of X, Y, Z, obviously. And it's probably the biggest improvement in conversion my agency's ever seen. And that's why I wanted to make a full bootcamp on it tomorrow, because the guarantee is what moves mountains. And you should never make an offer to a client without a guarantee, or at least have a guarantee in your pocket. Tomorrow, I'll show you why and how to make it make sense for both your business and theirs, right? Let's do X first. So I just want to touch on niche versus type of business, because again, I'm going to use the e-com and info space as an example. And I'm going to do that for 2 reasons. First, almost everyone just goes for that. So I feel like I can just rip it apart, because you probably were thinking about doing that. And secondly, because it's the space that I operate in, right? And so I know it well. So e-com is not a niche. The amount of times people confuse this, e-com is a type of business. Underneath e-com, there are niches. So here's like examples: skincare brands, that's a niche. Electric scooter brands, that's a niche. Nasal breathing is a brand. Luxury wallets are a brand. And we have clients in all 4 of these niches, right? All 4 of them we service and we've worked on. Info, same story. These are some examples of niches that are part of the info business type. Agency life, systems and profit, technically. We have a client that sells divorce, right? So she helps women go through divorce, and she helps them kind of on the other side of that feel better about it and move on, and all of these things. That is the online program. Crypto and Forex. We have clients that sell courses on crypto and Forex, right? We currently have, I was very surprised with the client. I thought that this niche did not exist again. And then we ran ads for it and it's doing very well. So I would take my words back, but she basically sells a course for new mothers. So apparently when you become a new mother, there's a lot of things you need to learn very quickly, and it's quite stressful. And so people will buy $1,000 course teaching them the ins and outs of being a mom for a new baby. So anyways, that's a niche that I didn't think existed, which apparently does, and is worth quite a bit. Now let's talk about your measurable result. And again, I'm not going to touch on that at this module, because I just want to talk about the actual offer that we're doing here. But this goes back to outcome-based selling. Your why must always change. So like, when you create this sentence, which is your offer, do not just make one why. Your why, every single sales call should change based on the questions and the data that you received in the beginning of the call, right? That's how we do this. Then the Z, I've said this so many times, but there is margin in mystery. you cannot say your agency does Facebook ads or your agency does TikTok ads, because that doesn't sound mysterious. It sounds like exactly what it is. If I Google Facebook ads or YouTube Facebook ads, I'm going to get some tutorials. And so business owners inherently think that they can just try and do it themselves. And this comes back to the first point that I was making, because I'm trying to bring everything home. But remember, no one goes to watching a boring race. So try and make your race interesting, your track interesting. And again, practicing what we preach. Centrosite does not sell Facebook, TikTok ads. We sell Centroflow, which is a completely made up word, which is in line with our brand name. And Centroflow is basically just PPC services. We have a very interesting spin on it though, which you guys can look at our website for more info, copy it if you want. But basically, we believe in multi-channel marketing, not single channels. So we don't just do Facebook ads, we do all three of them and combine them, and we get aggregate ROAS across all three channels versus individual, because tracking is a mess. So I'd much rather just compare total ad spend to total revenue. And also, there's a bit of misalignment, because if someone sees your ads, they like the product, they then Google you. Google ads will find the conversion, but Facebook ads is the beginning one. Hard to track, hard to kind of accumulate. So we just do multi-channel. And clients love it because of a lot of different reasons, which I can get into if you guys want when we do the Q&A. But to move on, no-brainer alternative XYZ. As I said, this probably lifted our conversion like 70%. And that is basically the whole topic that we're going to be going over tomorrow. So I'll see you guys there. Okay, so let's just start by making things very easy. As I said, like in this process of creating an offer, because I'm looking at the people on this call, and I think almost every single one of you could do with refining your offer or making it more interesting, right? Applying this knowledge, I think. And so let's just try and make it easy, right? And again, the reason I want to do easy is because I want faster results, because I understand everyone sometimes uses agencies as stepping stones, right? A lot of people start an agency because there's cash flow that they then want to deploy to do something else, or they start an agency in a space they're not very passionate about because they need money to attack industries that they do care about. So whichever one appeals to you doesn't matter, but let's just do this quickly so we can move on quickly, okay? First thing, sell before you build. Stop wasting time building SOPs and onboarding and interviewing a bunch of people that you don't even know if you'll have clients to actually give them, right? Like, don't do any of that. Sell before you build. Your only thing should be coming up with offers and testing them, validating them, iterating, choosing one, then going all in, then getting enough clients to prove it, getting enough revenue to prove it, learning a little bit about the service yourself. Always believe you should always do the service yourself so that you know what you're talking about and you can attract high quality service. How can you interview people to run Facebook ads if you don't know how to run a Facebook ad yourself, right? Like, you can probably test personality and things, but there's going to be a lot of issues that come up there, right? So always do it yourself, and you have higher margins. Made a full video on that elsewhere. And a really, really simple question to ask is, if you don't know where they chill now, this niche is not for you. So like, everyone who starts off with a typical e-com business and they want to do Facebook ads for e-com, as almost everyone does, I almost can throw them off guard by one simple question. Where do e-com owners in your city go to chill? Like, where do they spend their free time? And if you cannot tell me, in other words, you can't say there's this weird Facebook group where like e-com owners love to chat about like inventory. For example, if you're hunting for e-com brands, which I know a lot of you are, inventory is a huge, huge problem, right? Like, to actually manage inventory. There's these apps like eShipper, which has an entire community of people who just discuss like how they're going to manage inventory and things. So I would just join the eShipper community, and there's like 500,000 e-com businesses to go after. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I know that because I had to fight with eShipper because fulfillment is a pain in the ass, right? Like, I know that the biggest brands out there struggle with tracking, so they're after Hyros. So if you join Hyros, you have a bunch of them there. Okay, like another one is Looks, right? The app. Like, I know these things. I know about the Shopify events that happen. If you go to meetup.com and you search ecom in your area, there will probably be a bunch of events. Another one is Eventable. And go to these events and just chat to people, right? Like, my first 20 clients did not come online. They came offline at parties or the Shopify events or whatever. Again, because there's less competition, right? Like, very easy for someone to ignore your Facebook message when you cold DM them. Much harder when you're across from them and you ask to buy them a drink. Most people don't say no, right? Especially if you just wowed the crowd with the fancy question you threw in front of a panel, right? These are types of things that like really just getting results very quickly. And if you live in a city like London, like the States, where you have the ability to do these things, like the fact that you're not using it to your advantage is a huge, huge problem, right? So anyways, if you can't answer that question, you're probably in the wrong niche, and you need to be honest with yourself with that. Next, agency momentum is a real thing. So deliver what's easy first. That's what I'm saying. Do not pick super complicated services that are hard to deliver, hard to attribute, hard to prove. Like, rather go with simple services that are quick to learn, quick to hire and train other people, and quick to deliver results fast, because clients are willing to pay for it. Now, obviously, that means you must charge a little bit less, right? For simple services, you cannot charge big retainers, but you can go with volume, right? And in my opinion, having volume versus a few high quality clients is better, because every time a client leaves, it affects you less. We used to charge upwards of 5-6K per client as retainer. Now we charge a minimum of 2 plus percentage performance. Why? Because at 5-6K, every time a client left or there was an issue, it hurt the balance sheet quite a lot, right? By spreading out the risk, I was way more comfortable with that. And I could take on more clients because we were taking on smaller clients. And I just preferred that for retention, momentum, hiring purposes, a lot of things. It just made more sense, right? Especially if you're trying to hire quickly. Do not go where it's hardest. This is simple. Like, you understand, if you are trying to achieve success in like the e-com space, you are competing against me and almost everyone else on YouTube who's trying to like show off their agency results, because they're almost always in the e-com space, right? And so there's a lot of clients, there's a lot of room for us to go around. So don't worry. But and again, like, I just want to really drive that point home. And then really just question if it even makes sense for a business to hire you. Like, if you, for example, were trying to target, there's like some very weird brands. Like, if you were, one of the examples that I'm going to give is like fire installation companies. If you were in the middle of the desert and you were trying to sell lead generation to fire installation companies in the middle of summer, you're probably going to have a super hard time getting that to work, right? So like, really just make sure that your service actually even makes sense. And then again, like I said, higher prices demand more thought and consideration. So I recently was having a chat, I think it was actually Nazar on our call, when we were talking about the how much should we charge for our fee. Every time you increase how much you charge, you have to have more case studies, you have to have more results to show, you have to have more things, because you increase their consideration. A jump from 2 to 5 to 6K for most businesses requires more thought and consideration, okay? And if you're just starting out, I would honestly just say charge less, because your conversion numbers will go higher. And when you're starting out, you have nothing to lose, right? You need those clients to the door. You don't need big retainers. So again, it's kind of like balancing your priorities here, right? And then your offer must map back to a quantifiable outcome, not a list of deliverables. So never start an agency that does social media management, ever. Because you're not selling outcomes, you're selling deliverables, which is like, we will make 5 posts a week, or we will send out 2 Instagram stories a day, or something like that. There's no result there, which means there's no justifying your price that you're charging. That's basically just deliverables, which is, the thing is, when you sell deliverables, you become a commodity, which means people compare on price. When you sell outcomes, you break out of that whole commodity selling mindset. So again, I know there's some quite complicated topics there, so we'll go into that in future boot camps. But I just want to show you some examples. So we help electric scooter brands get customers at half the cost by building SMS clubs, or we XYZ. There's a couple of things here. First of all, electric scooter brands is not an e-com brand, it's an actual niche. I know that this is an up and coming niche because of COVID and everything that's going on with global warming and whatnot. So these brands are hungry. It's also easy to get results for them because a lot of people want an electric scooter. And so it's also easy to get results. Get customers at half the cost. That is a extremely, extremely strong outcome and quantifiable result, right? Because maybe in the sales call, the potential customer was complaining about like cost per acquisitions or whatever was too high. By building SMS clubs, right? Like, how many of you didn't even know that SMS like was an actual service that people deliver? Like, I don't know, did anyone get surprised when they saw this? Yeah, you can see Ant's putting up his hand. And that's because like, everyone thinks of ads and email, but SMS has slowly been a growing thing. Like, I also know a really, really big industry or niche at the moment is a chatbot implementation. Like, you guys have been on website and you've seen the little chatbots that come up and you ask it questions and then it answers you straight away and you have many chats and things. Like, that is a huge, huge industry. Like, you know, if I was starting an agency today, I would start an agency that does SMS clubs / integration and chatbot stuff, because I feel like it's high utility, high margin. It's interesting. Most people are not thinking about it. It's extremely easy to learn and set up, which means I can make it SOPs and I can get people at like $2 an hour to implement the service. And also it is highly defensible because the only people who are interested in doing that would be brands that already have some throughput. Another issue with selling PPC as a service is when brands come to you, they're looking for you as a solution to make sales. And very often it's got nothing to do with the ads themselves. The problem is their actual website, their product, their offer just needs some work, right? And so suddenly they don't need a marketing agency. They actually need a business development agency or someone who can actually help them with their business. Whereas someone who's looking at like SMS integration, they're looking to increase revenue, not start revenue in the first place, which means they already have a proven product, a proven TAM, total addressable market, and they usually have a bit of money so they can afford high retainers as well. XYZ, again, I'm going to speak about that tomorrow, but I hope you guys can appreciate that color coding, trying to link the X, the Y, and the Z together. So we have that. Another one, we help Fireplace installers send out more quotes by creating valuable callback forms, or the XYZ. So this could have read, we help fire installers get more customers by running Facebook ads, or we get XYZ. But if I did that, then suddenly I'm just another agency that just gets sales and I just run Facebook ads. Instead, I help them send out more quotes. Now, again, that's a hugely measurable outcome that is not attached to sales because, again, this is what I'm thinking. You really have to think through this process. This should not be something that's rushed. The reason, if I was building this agency, I would not make my offer more customers because I don't control the end result, right? Something like this, someone has to go there, measure the fireplace, talk to them, show them their inventory, whatever. Like, my job as an agency is just to get the quote, right? Like if they mess up on the quote because they charge too much, the guy they send is like late and he's bad salesman, like a lot of issues happen there. That's now going to affect the results, which my agency is not responsible for. My agency is responsible for what I can control, which is getting more quotes, right? And sending more quotes out. And the way that I do this is creating valuable callback forms. That is basically just lead generation. Like if you were to convert that from salesmanship to actual language, it would be just lead generation, right? Which is creating some form of lead magnet PDF, putting it out there through PPC, getting people to opt in, taking those, putting it in a CRM, and then telling them, here's leads, go send them quotes, and I have an end result, right? But it is way more enticing. It's way more mystical or magical, which means I can probably charge a lot more because I sound like an expert. I sound like I deliver a super strong result. And the other thing is a lot of these businesses don't actually know how to get results or what they want to get those results. They just know that they want more sales. Like I imagine most of these lead-based companies don't even know that they can create like a valuable PDF and do lead gen, right? That's just not something that they know about. The average person doesn't, right? Now we are all in this small little echo chamber. So like things like this make sense to us, but the average person doesn't. And so it's important that you also put your thinking cap on and say, right, the average person has no idea what I'm talking about. So you can do things like this, which make it seem like you're doing a lot more than you actually are, right? In a nutshell. So how are we going to do this? We help X achieve Y by doing Z or the XYZ. Basically, again, I want to now take that and now show you a iterative approach, which is 5 options, 2 will work, and then you choose. Okay, so 5 options, 2 of them will work. And at that point, you choose the one that you're most passionate about or the one that's giving you the strongest signal that it's easy to get some results quickly in the door. You don't have to do 5, you can do more, you can do 6. But I've tested this with a lot of people. Some people have done 6, some people have done 3, some people have done 4. I've just found that 5 is a sweet spot. So if you are starting an agency or you are scaling an agency and you are in the same spot. So there's 2 scenarios where this plays out. If you're starting an agency and you have 0 clients or very few clients, this is for you. If you are not starting an agency, but you have an agency and you are struggling to grow, in other words, you tried like all the outreach systems, you just cannot get more clients, this is for you. If you're running an agency that is signing clients every single week, like clockwork, forget what I'm saying now because it's probably going to actually distract you from what you're doing because what you're doing is actually just working. Okay, but if you're not, it's really time to go back to your offer and simply just identify 3 niches and then identify 2 services. And then from those 3 niches and those 2 services, come up with 5 sentences just like this, right? So 5 of these things. And then we adopt our iterative mindset, which is we just trial 5 of them and we use some statistics, not complicated, simply just like which one didn't work and which one did work. And then we just slowly start eliminating. So we start with 5, we scratch off 1, then we start with 4. And your process of scratching them off could change depending on what is happening, etc. Like if you come up with a sentence and you sit down to now do lead sourcing for it, and you are really, really struggling to find leads for the business, like you don't know where to find these people at all, scratch them off the list, right? Like if you're facing a lot of resistance, scratch them off the list. That's how you know it's time to remove someone off your list, is when you start getting resistance, right? If you get on a couple of sales calls with this niche and every single time it's a problem, every single time you can't close, and you are applying best practices like the stuff I'm going to go through in some of our future modules and boot camps, so you are actually selling well and you're still not moving, then realistically you're just in the wrong niche, right? And that's something to work on. So now that you have an offer that makes sense, right? Which, by the way, is probably more than 99% of other agencies out there, because as I said, most agencies are just like, I run ads and I do it for e-com businesses and I'm going to be a millionaire. Like that's the game plan, right? Like if you have an offer that actually makes sense and you've really thought about it, and the problem is it's still not good enough, right? It used to be good enough, but the problem is this is also a growing space. And so there's a lot of new people entering it. And I feel like it's my responsibility to be like very honest with you guys, which is I am in a position where I see a lot of agencies, the ins and outs of them. I see the space very well. I'm sure people see it better than me, but I just speak to a lot of agencies. So what worked 2 years ago is not working anymore because it's become harder to get results. There are more people in the space doing it, which means you have more competition. I think also consumers have become more aware of how to do certain things. Like the amount of e-com owners who knew how to run ads 2 years ago versus today is very different, especially because these platforms have consistently been making things easier to do, right? Like Facebook deliberately almost every couple months removes certain things to make it easier to run ads because it's in line with their own stuff, right? So it is no longer good enough to just have an offer that actually makes sense. And this is where we talk about brands versus agencies. So I've got 2 people here. Now, I deliberately didn't put their names on them, but I'm pretty sure you guys could guess their names. I mean, does anyone have any idea who any of these people are? Anyone can go for it. Let's start with the guy in the black.
Probably Batman.
I think it's a good guess. Anyone got a guess for the guy on the right-hand side?
Superman.
There we go, Batman, Superman. Now, their names are certainly not plastered on their foreheads, but everyone got it. And the simple reason for that is it's a brand. It's not just a typical superhero that we see. And so if I was to take the Batman color and logo and put it all over my website and stuff, you'd probably know what it is, even if I didn't tell you, right? And that is super important. In future modules, I'm going to drive home the system of outreach that we have, which I truly think is quite different. And that's how we get so many consistent sales almost every time, which is applying brand and taking what the same outreach methods that everyone's doing, using them not for outreach, but literally just to get eyeballs, looking at it a completely different way, taking those eyeballs, filtering it through with a brand, and then applying some math to it so that we can have consistency. Because the number one thing that I think my agency does very well is consistency. We can book the same sales calls like clockwork and our numbers don't fluctuate, right? As far as sales percentage goes, right? I think that's one thing that we've absolutely mastered. So this is Centrosite. That's my agency. I'm wearing the shirt. I would highly encourage you guys to actually go check out our website. Like to have a look at more of this. Be aware you will be completely hammered with ads like everywhere on the internet after browsing through it. So maybe put on some spy blockers. Otherwise, we use a service. I'd also recommend AdRoll, which like is a way to put ads everywhere. So I know Centrosite runs ads on Bing, on Google, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Snapchat, we run ads on Musical.ly, we run ads on the Facebook Explore network, we run ads on Baidu, we run ads like everywhere. And that is a huge process to manage. So there's just a service called AdRoll that I think they charge like 10% on top of the cost to do it. But it's worthwhile for us. So it allows us to be everywhere without all that overhead management, right? So here's some screenshots, a couple things. One agency plus multiple channels is more money in your pocket. This is basically our Z in our statement, right? Multi-channel versus single channel. So we compete against a lot of PPC agencies, and we do it effectively because they're trying to sell Facebook ads, they're trying to sell TikTok ads. We just say we don't sell Facebook or TikTok ads, we sell results. And we believe results is a multi-channel approach, not a single channel. And so there's little central bot in his little boat. Again, we have our own mascot. And the point of that is actually throughout our sales process, he appears a lot. He appears in all of our prospecting as well, because I'm going to show you some retargeting ads that we run. And again, just like you guys recognize Batman and Superman, the point is to start getting people to recognize him, because our goal with prospecting is just to get people to the site and then we bounce them back with other methods, right? And that's how we have high velocity sales. And it's also sales that I can control. I can turn up the sales or turn it down, which I like quite well. Anyways, a couple of screenshots. We have that. Here you can see, again, this is from another section on our website. You can see again, branding, consistency, central bot, colors, headlines. You can see it's just a brand, right? There's a little central bot again. Everything has been customized. You can see on the Google results on the right-hand side, there's a little shoe showing up there because we showed running shoes, right? Attention to detail here. And again, like not to toot my own horn here, but I honestly believe we are becoming a brand, not just an agency. And I feel like we represent ourselves that way, and we certainly spend money on it that way, right? Because some of this stuff also costs money to do these things. And I'm by no means saying that you have to be doing it at this level. I'm just trying to open your eyes to what is required to separate yourself from competition, right? Even the small things, like on the left-hand side, the Facebook ad is for the same shoe as in the Google ad on the right-hand side. And when I get into a sales call and the customer's like, I don't know what multi-channel is, I often just come back to the spot on our website. I'm like, so basically the person sees the running shoe on Facebook and then they learn that they want to buy running shoes. And then they go and Google it on Google, and then we show them an ad and they buy, right? Like super, super simple way to explain it. Here's an ad that we run on Facebook that books about 5 meetings a week, right? And again, central site logo, central site colors. It's funny. It doesn't look like a typical case study type of thing. Here's another one. This is little central bot, a little bit of a cartoon. Again, colors, consistency, central bot, consistency. It's unique. I can see some of you are smiling, hopefully, so it's not so boring. And it's also just different. And, you know, when you see this in your Facebook feed, Instagram feed, like the list goes on and on, you know, it's better. I don't know if you guys have watched the module in the course yet on email outreach that Logan recorded, where you basically went through the email, and you'll notice there's strong parallels to what you're seeing here, because what we do is consistent. And so what happens is, even if someone doesn't see this ad or doesn't click on it and they start seeing our brand and our colors, they start recognizing it. What happens is when we get to sales calls and I talk about retargeting, I usually make a very big joke about it. And I basically say, you know, those irritating central bot ads that have been following you around to eventually get you to do this call. Imagine if I just did that for you and we follow around all the customers on the planet that you could have. That's how I sell it, right? So again, it's like margin in mystery. And this process of multi-channel everything, we call it Centraflow. And that is the service that we sell, which no other agency can sell Centraflow because it wouldn't make sense for them, right? But we can, because and it also makes it seem like we invented it, which we certainly didn't by any means. But because we seem like we did, we can charge a huge retainer for it. And it's kind of like, if you're comparing our agency to other agencies, it's like, okay, this agency does Facebook, this one does Facebook, this one does Facebook, these guys do Centraflow. And, you know, it's kind of like we're in our own league. Like no one can compete against us, which is a huge, huge benefit for a lot of things. And by the way, guys, I also just want to highlight that I wish I had this when I was beginning, because like this is like years of trial and error and learning that you guys are getting here. Just by the way, like when we started out, I did not have this process like totally pinned down to it like this. So anyways, let's look at some action steps. We wrap this up and then we can jump into a bit of a Q&A. But action steps, and if possible, let's complete this before tomorrow's bootcamp, because I really want to now jump into a Q&A on everything that I just said. But I understand that coming up with these sentences, which I think all of you should, is not like something that you should do on the spot. Like some thought and also some research should go into it. And I would like tomorrow to close the loop on the process by focusing on the XYZ part, which is the most important part. And then I really just want to spend the rest of the time tomorrow just like going through a couple of your guys' examples, pulling them apart, giving you feedback, and telling you what I would do. So some action steps, do some actual outcome research. Now, I have done onboarding calls with almost all of you. And one thing that I've always highlighted is outcome research, which is like, what do your potential customers actually want? And everyone always tells me more sales, but that's obvious. So like, if I look at the e-com owners, and I pointed this out to a lot of you, again, you should know this if you are close enough to the niche to actually be selling it. But like, I know that e-com owners, aside from just more sales, one of the biggest things for them that they care about is consistency, because e-com is an up and down industry, right? They also want predictability so that they can order their stock and they don't have to risk huge amounts of money. And so when I pitch to a e-com business, that's how I sell. I sell based on that, not based on just making more money, because that's a given, right? Another one that I'm just thinking of as an agency at the moment, they basically implement Sales Navigator like templates and formats. So I assume majority of you know what Sales Navigator is. It's LinkedIn, like I think it's $99 a month or something that allows you to search for leads and whatever. It's another entire industry or niche that people use literally, where all they do is like implement these templates, monitor it, provide feedback, and train the LinkedIn guys on outreach, right? Because LinkedIn works very, very well for any B2B type industry that is on LinkedIn. And I've had calls with you and I pointed this out. E-com owners do not live on LinkedIn, right? Like they just don't do that, okay? But there are certain businesses that do. And so again, it's about understanding your niche, and all of these not outsource, but outreach methods is dependent on your sentence. Because if you show me your sentence, I can tell you what outreach method is going to work for you, not what outreach method works, because they all work. It's just dependent on your industry and your offer and your guarantee, right? That's basically what makes sense. So I would like all of you to come up with like 5 sentences. If you can more, that would be great. Just understand that every additional sentence you come up with means you're going to spend a little bit longer testing, right? Because you have more things to test, right? And we'll go through all of those sentences on tomorrow's bootcamp. And yeah, that basically wraps up the slide part of the training. So I'm going to now literally have like another 45 minutes. I don't know how long we're going to go for, but I'm just going to open it up basically to a Q&A. So I'm trying to keep this very specific to what we just discussed, not like a general Q&A. So you guys can unmute yourselves and we'll just kind of go in order of as they come. But who has questions or anything that they want me to go over again or re-explain or something specifically on offer creation and specifically on everything that I just went through? Anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't know who spoke before.
I was just about to say.
Oh, okay. So I have a couple of questions, but the first one came from the beginning where you said that, there's only so many lanes, right?
Yeah.
So the way I've learned about this, like we want to think about it as a abundant, right? So we don't get in our heads like, oh, I can't achieve this or that. And since you mentioned that, I'm starting to think maybe like there needs to be a balance of being realistic and listening to what the market wants, and then being optimistic so you can keep on going, right? So a mix of those, but I wanted to just get an idea of how you think about that in those terms, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good question. So I feel like there is a bit of a thin line between abundance thinking and delusional thinking, right? Like if you've been hitting a niche for like 3 months and you've bought lots of courses and applied the best practices and you still are not getting anywhere, to continue would be insane, right? That's the whole Einstein's thing. And again, like I think Einstein's probably a bit smarter than me, maybe a lot. It's a bit debatable, but let's just go with a bit. And one of his definitions of insanity is what did he say? Oh, insanity is doing the same thing over and over with expecting different results, right? And I would apply the same thing, which is like I would have the abundance mindset, and I would approach this with my abundance mindset is I can start or scale an agency to fiercely strong profit levels if I keep iterating through a process that's proven to work. That is how I would be abundant. But then I would be realistic to say, but that process says that I should look at data and try things and move on, not just get stuck in the same thing, doing everything, right? And I strongly believe that like the quickest way to do this is not to listen to me, because I know I just spent a bit of time bashing e-com and info space, which wasn't my intention, because that's what my agency does. Look at your own data. Like if you've been doing e-com for 3 months and you have not made a dent, e-com is not the industry for you. As long as you can be honest with yourself and say, look, I have put in work and I have put in the hours. So that's how I would have abundance that this can work, but also realistic that it might just work in a different way than I initially thought. And that's fine. And again, that comes back to the stepping stone thing.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. Was that the only question from you, Henry?
No, how about other ones? But I don't know if anyone else has more questions. I don't want to just take everything the whole time, I guess. The second one was just most of them are just out of curiosity, right? So you mentioned you're now going into account chasing. And obviously, at my stage, I shouldn't be doing that by any means, right? So I will not try to do that. But I'm just curious, like, how are you going about the thought process of doing that, right? Like, do you know for a fact, okay, my agency is going to be making 80K a month for the next 4 months, so I don't need to sign any more clients unless it's these 25 accounts or one of these 25 accounts? Or are you like saying, okay, like it's okay if my agency drops a little bit as long as we are focused on signing these accounts?
Well, to be honest with you, it's about leverage. So I know how much it costs me to run my agency on a monthly basis. That's payroll and software cost, right?
Yeah.
My agency currently has enough cash to pay everyone and softwares for 8 years if we made no money.
Oh, nice.
So I'm sitting in a position where I could lose every single client, not make any money, and pay everyone nicely and costs for 8 years. So when I'm in that position, I can start taking risks, right? Obviously.
Yeah, of course.
And so one of those risks is I want to start going after clients that are a lot more complicated to run. In other words, from my side, they have CMOs, they have a pre-existing marketing department where we are a bolt-on, not a replacement. Because a lot of our clients, we are the marketing department. Whereas for larger companies, they don't want a marketing department. They want someone to join their team, right? And facilitate it, not just be the entire team, right? And so that's a bit of a shift in thinking. To answer your question, how am I going about doing it? I've spent a lot of time putting together a spreadsheet of 25 people that I just want their brands. I want their brands on my balance sheet and I want them on my website, so much so that I would do their work for free. Like I would just bring on an extra person to provide services for free because I can afford to do so. And so I've spent some time figuring out this 25, and now I just hired someone who every single day I get a report on how many contacts they have found of those 25, right? So these companies have between like 20 and 50 employees, and I want to know the name of every person's mom, dad, granddaughter, child. I don't care. And I want names and phone numbers. And I just want to know how many conversations are we having with anyone who has any form of connection to anyone at any seniority level in these 25 companies. That's the metric that I'm playing for. And I technically can do that for the next 8 years before signing any of them.
Okay, that's pretty awesome, I have to say. It's pretty cool.
Taken a while to get there because I've also been in the opposite position where I would say probably a year and a half ago, like today, almost today, I was signing clients who I had absolutely zero intention of keeping because I honestly knew that they were not going to get results. And that was because no matter how hard I worked, no matter what best practices I applied, they just had a product or a service that I knew was almost impossible. They were delusional about the price point. They just had a lot of things going wrong with it. And we brought them on because, again, like we had bills to pay. We had things to do, right? So it's a process. But you will get there eventually. It's just a bit of a long march.
Yeah, for sure. And the last question I have so far, right, you spoke about going wide before going deep, which makes sense to me. But like the main question is like, how long would you say we need to test out the different offers before saying, okay, I'm forgetting about these and just focusing on this one offer? Or like, what are the numbers we should be looking at, for example, or what metrics would let us know, okay, like this one isn't working, that one is working?
I would really challenge your thinking on that in the sense that it's not a sense of time as much as it's a sense of resistance. And so unfortunately, there's no golden metric that I would look at and say, okay, it's been 3 months, because again, for every part of my business, I have almost a metric that I can look at and things. For this part of the business, it really is gut feeling because the metrics are very dissuading, right? Like one of the things that we talk about with our clients for PPC is there's vanity metrics and then there's KPI metrics. Vanity metrics is like impressions when you're running ads. I can report to you that this month we had 10 times the impressions of last month, right? And that would sound amazing, but like it doesn't matter if there's actually no sales. right?
Yeah.
So vanity metrics. The same thing is like, you can say, I've been trying this offer or this service for 3 months and it hasn't worked. But then I would be like, is your 3 months worth of trying equal to my 3 months of trying? Because I think about 3 months is a good amount to try, but like, can I do more in the 3 months than you can? Because I know more, I have more resources, more time, you see? So I don't like the time scenario. I think it's a bad way. I would honestly just have a bit of a gut feeding with resistance, which is like, you start trying to sell this service. The first thing that you need to do is find people to sell to. If you are finding it really, really hard to find a lot of leads, that's way, way, way too much resistance, right? Like red flag, cut the service. If you start speaking to people in this niche and they've never heard of your service before and they have zero desire to actually buy it, too much resistance. Remember, there's this whole thing that comes down to now marketing and sales in general, which is different stages of the journey. The first step to the journey is education on the problem and education on the solution. You do not, as a starting agency, unless you're doing like, and honestly, even my agency doesn't fit into this. Like, I would say, unless you're doing like 250K a month, you do not want to start going after prospects that need to be educated on the problem, right? Like, if someone doesn't know that Facebook ads can work for them, it's a waste of your time to try and sell them on it, because you have to first educate them on how they work, why they work, what they do, etc. You want to find people that know that a service works and they want it, and you just have to prove to them why you are the best person for it and sell them there. So I would really just gauge it based on resistance, how much resistance you're feeling, and from there you can pretty much get a bit of a gut feeling and implement it from there.
Awesome. Thanks. So basically, like, pay attention to like the clear bottlenecks, right? So if I can't find leads and it's very hard, okay, done. If there's not a lot of interest, done. If I have interest, but then people don't really understand it, okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
And honestly, the best barometer with that is to just have conversations. Like, again, in some of the future modules, I'll get more into this, but like, sales for me is no longer about making sales. And you'll notice me subtly change the way I talk about sales. Like, even what I just did with the account-based stuff, my metric wasn't how many sales are we making, it was how many conversations are we having, right? And so I'm more interested in having a conversation versus making a sale. Like, if you can have a conversation with someone in a niche that you care about, just honestly just ask them, just be like, so why have you not run Facebook ads before? And if the answer is something like, oh, it doesn't work for my space, or it doesn't make sense for us, then it's a red flag. But if it's like, oh, it was just way too complicated for me to do, then it's a green flag, because then it's like, they want it, they just don't want the complexity, which is obviously what you're there for, right?
Yeah.
And so just honestly, just ask your niches, like, just message them and be like, have you thought about installing a CRM? No, why not? It's complicated. Cool, we'll do it for you. You know, like, figure out, again, like, I feel like the agency space is very, very distracted, because in most businesses, they don't just start a business. They identify a problem and they start a business to solve the problem. Whereas in our space, it seems like everyone just starts a business before they even found a problem to solve first, right? And I feel like that's quite important, because there are some overarching problems. Like, most businesses need some form of PPC, right? Especially if they're an established business. But I just feel like you'd have a way better time selling to a niche that is like observant of what problem they want to solve.
For sure. For sure. Okay. Thank you.
Congrats on your client, by the way.
Thank you, man.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything before we wrap this up? Nizar, you good? Yannick, Carlos, Daniela, anyone?
Yeah, I'm good.
I probably can pump out a question. I was wondering, because I'm building out my new website right now. We're redoing everything. I also rebranded completely, not like name, but just color wise. So I can have a little bit more contrast between the sections that I have. What I was thinking is that the whole idea of branding, the same way that you have like the Centra bot, would you, and the Centra flow, I guess, like the process. I've seen a lot of this work in the sales space, not much in like e-com or like ad space, but they call it like a framework. So like so they say like, oh, if we help e-com brands scale to 7 figures a month using our MPS framework or something like that. So what is your thought on that? Or does that not really matter that much? It's just a name for it.
I think in the service-based business, everyone tries to productize their offering, and that is just a framework. Like Centriflow is just a framework, right?
Yeah.
So like the thing of selling it through an MPS framework, I think is the same as Centriflow. I would just give it a name. Just call it something outside of MPS framework, and you have another Centriflow, right? Like really all Centriflow is a framework of getting results through PPC, which is start ads on Facebook because it's again, actually we've changed this, but start ads on TikTok because it's got the lowest CPM, lowest cost, lowest CPL, and test your offer, right? Then simultaneously launch on Google, only branded keyword searches, because when people see your offer, they are going to Google it because they want reviews, conversions, etc. So you want to capture that traffic, right? Simultaneously put all the other platforms pixels on your site so that you can turn them on as soon as it makes sense to do so via retargeting, right? And again, like the key thing here is to be quite flexible in your services as well as your sales, which is for us, sometimes we start ads on TikTok, for other times we started on different platforms. So it's also quite important if you're going to go that route. And again, this is why I'm saying PPC is really, it's a super complicated service. Like we have the most complicated service in my agency because I have full stack people. Like in our agency, you have to be able to run Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, TikTok ads, Snapchat ads, like the list goes on. I don't just have a Facebook ads guy, right? And so for our info businesses, we almost always start their ads on YouTube, because if you're trying to sell a course, that makes more sense than running an ad on TikTok, right? It just makes more sense. And so again, we have a framework, and again, like it makes it hard to SAP because you can't just like SAP. So we have to be a bit broader with SAP. Like the first line is identify the channel that makes sense for them first, run ads there, versus log into Facebook Business Manager, enter this, then do this, then do this. You see what I'm saying? Like it's more complex and it requires higher skilled people, which means higher cost as well. And so that's why I'm saying, like, if you're right in the beginning, don't choose a service that's very difficult to deliver results, because also retention goes down.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, the guy that I have working with me, he has experience with everything. Like he knows how to run all types of ads, and that's why I wasn't advertising it on the website, but we do all of the platforms. So I guess a good thing to do is to have it on the website and to incorporate it into our messaging too, because we don't actually like advertise it. We just say paid ads. We don't really like specify what it is. And then once we like are on the call, I find that all the call recordings I have, it's me selling them. Yeah, we'll do like Facebook. We'll start off with Facebook and Google and then transition into YouTube and then TikTok. So we end up doing all of that anyways. But I guess if we advertise it, then it's a lot higher, I guess, value.
It's a differentiator. And the other thing also is this must tie into your actual overall business strategy, right? So we're doing these boot camps every 2 weeks. I'm going to make a poll in the community for you guys to vote on what the next topic is. But like one of the boot camps that I'm going to do is on actually agency strategy and structure. And one of them is the reason why we chose to do multi-channel is because we presented as multi-channel on the sales call. We sell them on multi-channel. We then identify which channel makes the most sense for them to start. And we start there and we get results. Because if we can't get results on the channel that makes most sense, we won't get results on the others, right?
Yeah.
And then what we do is we launch the first 2 channels, which is always Google and Google, or Google and Facebook, or Google and TikTok, right? Yeah. That's always our MO. And we achieve results across those 2. But then we immediately, as soon as we have consistency results, we start trying to push them into a 3rd channel, right? So typical e-com brand that sells a product that's for like oldish people will start on Facebook and Google for the capturing. Then we will try and upsell them on TikTok because it makes sense. The 3rd channel, we charge extra for. And so if our retainer was $3,000, we charge 50%. So $3,000 for the first 2 channels. The next channel is $1,500 a month. The next channel is $750. So we drop by 50% each time as clients bolt on more channels. And so in line with our plans to increase our AOV for our own clients, we actually charge more per channel. And so there was a strategic decision I took to do multi-channel, not just because I wanted to differentiate myself, but because I knew that if I implement it today, it won't make any difference tomorrow. But in 2 months' time, when clients are getting results and I can bolt them on more services, I can actually make more on the existing customers. And that will cover the cost of hiring people who can do more full stack.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a plan there as well.
Yeah, no, that's a smart idea. I mean, I feel like with that, it would work more, I guess, with, I wouldn't say bigger brands, but like the smaller ones that are like smaller retainers, I feel like might be a bit of a hard sell. Have you found like is there like, have you found like a take rate where like, 80% do that, 20 say like, oh no, or?
We have a 50% upsell conversion rate. And the reason for that is because we have 50% result rate. 1 out of 2 clients who join gets great results plus. And so I only mention additional services and additional fees if we're getting results on the first one. Because if someone is printing money on the first channels, they will throw money at a third channel because they believe they can do the same on the third channel. Like people are also delusional in their own decisions. And so I don't present that as an option until I'm getting results in the first 2. That's why I have such a high conversion on it. Because it's almost 100%. Every time I offer an upsell, I convert almost every time, regardless of size of brand, because it's more, my sale pitch is honestly, hey, we're running ads on 2 channels, getting a 2.5 ROAS. If we add a third one in there and keep the same ROAS numbers, which is possible because we've just proven we can, you'll make 2.5 on more ad spend cumulatively, which is more profit, more revenue. Why would you not do that? Like almost everyone is going to say, okay, let me at least try it because it sounds like it's going to work. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's all if they're actually seeing the results. That's
correct. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I have a list, but that's for like the call later. But yeah, that's about it, man. Thanks.
Perfect. Right, I think Carlos, you said you were good. So Yannick, it's just on your side. I know you're just kind of starting your agency journey. So I mean, this is probably very relevant for you. But questions, or are you good?
No, I'm just working on my golden sentences at the moment. So I'm more curious about tomorrow's bootcamp, where I can then actually present one or two, and then we're taking them apart. I think the only question I'm having at the moment is around building the brand, which is not really relevant, I think, at my stage now, like right now. But when do you think I should, or when should you typically spend more time on thinking about how to position yourself as a brand, or is it something I can do already? It's like when I'm reaching out to potential clients.
I would do it immediately. The only reason I didn't is because when I was starting, I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't have SAP. Immediately, because you see, the thing is, when you create a brand, it forces you to make up stuff that makes you unique. So like I had to make up Centriflow and Centrobot because without it, I wouldn't have a brand, right? And so it forces you to make yourself seem different. Like none of you should get on sales calls and say you sell XY service. You should sell something that is completely made up. And then when the client asks, how does that get results? You break it down and say, okay, this is how we do it. We run ads, we do this, we do tracking, we have zero, we have the whole story to it. I feel like you can do that immediately. And I think it's also quite a good litmus test, because if you cannot develop a brand based on your sentence, it's probably a very big indicator that your sentence is not going to work. So I would do it immediately. You could just do it like toned down, right? Like, so the website that we have took quite a bit of effort to build. I think it's completely overkill for a completely new agency. I feel like a new agency spending weeks building websites is a bad decision to make, right? Like that can be a one-pager. But I do think every single one of you can afford a designer who can just look at a page and just make everything the same color, make some like nice gradients, just like make certain things look better. I feel like everyone, if they don't have their own skill set to do that, which I think, in fact, looking at it, everyone here does, or it's very easy to learn, like in Canva and things like that, I feel like that would at least be worthwhile. Cool.
Awesome.
All right, guys. So you guys get value out of this? Was it useful as a first bootcamp? Looking for feedback there. Good. All right. Well, awesome. Well, I will see all of you then on tomorrow. Tomorrow, the plan is to kind of bring this full circle. I actually wanted to make this over 3 days. I realized that was a mistake because I tried to compress a lot of this down quickly. Could have gone longer, but I have been planning out the rest of the program. So that is looking very exciting. One of which is, I don't know if you guys all knew this, but there's the unlimited one-on-ones upon request, right? So you guys can jump on calls with me for as long as it takes if there's no existing content to fill that gap. So that will be in the program as well that we have. And tomorrow, full circle, as I said, wrap up your XYZ. And then I really just want to get into like, everyone should have a couple sentences, or at least an idea of some sentences, and we'll just rip them apart together. I feel like putting our brains together would be quite useful. So with that being said, thanks you all for joining the first bootcamp, and I'll see you all tomorrow.